Bruno, the dog who waited. In a small town, nestled between rolling green hills and a quiet river, an old man named Henry lived in a modest house at the end of a cobbled street. His home was filled with the soft ticking of clocks, some ancient, some newly crafted, all marking the passage of time. Time had once been Henry's greatest ally. He had spent his youth as a skilled watchmaker, carefully restoring old timepieces and crafting delicate new ones. But time had also taken everything he loved. His wife, Margaret, had been the love of his life. She had a voice like a gentle melody, and a laugh that could warm even the coldest of days. When she passed away, the world lost its color. Their children, once the joy of their home, had moved to distant cities, wrapped in their busy lives, too far to visit often. Now Henry was left with only memories and the quiet ticking of clocks. Every morning he followed the same routine: tea on the porch, a slow walk to the marketplace, and long evenings spent in his study, reading old books by lamplight. He had convinced himself that loneliness was simply part of growing old. But everything changed one stormy night. The wind howled through the narrow streets, rattling shutters and sweeping fallen leaves into swirling patterns. Rain poured heavily, drenching the empty town square. Henry pulled his coat tighter around himself as he walked back from the market, careful not to slip on the wet cobblestones. Then he heard a faint whimper, barely audible over the storm. He paused, straining to listen. The sound came again, softer this time, from a dark alley beside the bakery. Curious, he turned and peered into the shadows. There, curled up against a wooden crate, was a small golden-furred puppy, shivering violently. His fur was soaked, and his eyes, wide with fear, locked onto Henry's with a silent plea. Henry hesitated. He had lived alone for so long, could he care for another life? But something in those sad, pleading eyes pulled at his heart. Without a second thought, he removed his woolen scarf, wrapped the tiny creature in its warmth, and carried him home. That night, as the storm raged outside, Henry sat by the fireplace, watching the little pup sleep peacefully beside him. He reached out and ran a gentle hand over the soft fur. "I suppose you need a name," he murmured. "How about Bruno?" The puppy stirred slightly, his tail giving a weak wag. Henry smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had worn in years. Before Bruno had found Henry, life had been cruel. Born in the back alleys of the town, he had never known a home. His mother, a stray, had done her best to protect him, but the world was unkind. Hunger was a constant battle, and danger lurked in every shadow. One day, while searching for food, Bruno became separated from his mother. He wandered the streets alone, cold and frightened. He had hidden near the bakery for shelter, hoping for scraps, but the rain had been relentless. Just when he had thought he could not endure another night alone, Henry appeared. And for the first time in his life, someone cared enough to save him. Bruno quickly became Henry's shadow, following him everywhere. The townspeople adored him. The baker saved him a small loaf of bread every morning. The florist let him sniff fresh roses. Children laughed as they ran their fingers through his soft fur. But no one loved him more than Henry. They settled into a comfortable routine: morning walks along the river, peaceful afternoons in the garden, and evenings spent in front of the fireplace. Henry would sip his tea while Bruno lay by his feet, listening to the ticking clocks. One night, as they sat together, Henry sighed, running his fingers through Bruno's fur. "You know, my boy, I never thought I needed company. But these years with you have been the best of my life." Bruno nuzzled against him, as if he understood. And for the first time in many years, Henry did not feel alone. But time does not wait for anyone. One winter morning, the town awoke to a blanket of thick snow. But in Henry's house, something was amiss. Bruno, sensing something was wrong, nudged Henry's hand. When he didn't respond, Bruno whimpered, licked his face. Nothing. A few hours later, Mrs. Thompson, the kind florist, knocked on Henry's door. When there was no answer, she peeked inside and gasped. Henry lay still in his chair, a book resting in his lap. Bruno was curled up beside him, silent, as if waiting for him to wake up. But Henry never did. After the funeral, people expected Bruno to move on. But he didn't. No matter how many families offered him a home, he always found his way back. He returned to Henry's doorstep and lay down, waiting. Days turned into weeks. Rain came, snow fell. The seasons changed. Bruno did not. Years passed. Bruno grew old. His golden fur turned gray, and his legs grew weaker. But he still waited. One autumn evening, as the sky turned golden, Bruno lay on the porch, his breathing slow. He took one last deep breath, closed his eyes, and let the wind carry him into the quiet beyond. The next morning, the townspeople found him, lying peacefully. But something strange had appeared in the dust of the porch. 2 faint footprints. And beside them, a single paw print. Some said it was just the wind. Others whispered that Henry had finally come back for his friend. But one thing was certain: Bruno had never truly been alone. And now, he never would be. Years passed, but the legend of Bruno lived on. To honor him, the townspeople placed a plaque near Henry's house. It read, "Here waited Bruno, the dog who never gave up on his friend." A symbol of love, loyalty, and devotion. And so, in the heart of the little town, beneath the shade of an old oak tree, Bruno's memory remained forever waiting, forever loved.